In Dishonored 2, you play as an assassin with superpowers, or an angry gladiator with no qualms about cutting everyone's head off, or a nice person with sleep darts that just has a little bit of a bone to pick. The choice is yours to make, and this is the beauty of Dishonored. You can play how you want and watch the world around you change based on your actions, and the level of freedom this game gives you to do what you want is remarkable. But this game is getting pretty old, and it was marred with some pretty substantial issues when it came out, so the question is it still worth your time nowadays? Let's figure it out. What is going on, brothers and sisters? GL Jake is back with another game review, and today we're looking at Dishonored 2. If you like the video, you can smash like, you can smash subscribe, and we're going to keep rolling these videos out, baby. It's going to be sick, okay? One more thing before we get started. There's not going to be any major story spoilers here. I'm going to talk a little bit, give you a little summary, a little rundown, but otherwise, no spoilers, so you don't got to worry about that. In Dishonored 2, 15 years have passed since the conclusion of the first game. Emily now sits as the Empress of the Empire of the Isles, with Corvo acting as her bodyguard. At the beginning of the game, we're getting faced with this issue of the Crown Killer, who is murdering their political enemies, basically. And this causes many people to believe that Emily is behind the killings. This leads to a witch named Delilah showing up to Emily's throne room and killing her men and taking control of the throne. And it is at this point that you get to choose between playing as Emily Kaldwin or her father, Corvo Attano. And if you're unfamiliar, Corvo was the main character in the first Dishonored game. Each of these characters has a slightly different skill tree and a slightly different story to tell, so it really ramps up the replayability factor. Whichever character you don't choose is turned to stone by Delilah, and the character that you do choose is captured. And obviously, predictably, you escape captivity and you start your quest of retaking the throne. I thought the story to Dishonored 2 was fine. It's not groundbreaking in any capacity, but I thought it was pretty interesting. And its primary draw, like I said, is that it has multiple different endings and multiple different characters, so the way that you interact with the world can change the way everything plays out. And I like this a lot, but if you're the type of person that likes a compelling narrative and doesn't really intend on playing the game more than one time, you might not really get a lot out of the story here. It's a pretty standard revenge tale, and the villain isn't really remarkable in any way, in my opinion. Overall, I'd say the story met my expectations, but it's not something that I found to be incredibly compelling. Your journey in Dishonored 2 primarily takes place in the city of Karnaca, and this place just looks fantastic. It's heavily inspired by like southern European cities like you'd find in Greece or Italy. It just really has this cool Mediterranean vibe. Like, you can just tell that the weather rocks here. The way that the city has this coastal vacation spot glow to it really shows off the graphical fidelity on display in the world. Arcane clearly put a ton of effort into designing all the architecture that you'll find around the city and the rest of the world, and it paid off big time. And if you're just looking at the game world, it would be easy to forget that this game is almost 7 years old. But despite how good it looks from a distance, once you get deeper into the city, you're gonna find that it's actually really messed up. It's this really grungy, just disgusting place with rats and these big blood fly things everywhere. You'll actually see these blood flies just swarming and killing people as you move around the city, which I honestly thought was kind of cool. The city's police force is completely corrupted, so as a result, they'll attack you on sight even though they don't really know who you are. But the city is also controlled by a couple of different gang factions that you'll get to know as you go on. And as you explore deeper into the city, you're gonna find notes and hear conversations and see things that give you further insight into how this society operates. And all of this really just paints this picture of a city that is completely falling apart. Being in this pretty big city, the world has a lot of verticality that meshes really well with all the game mechanics. You can basically just teleport around the map using the height of the buildings and other structures to stay hidden from sight. A lot of thought is put into the way that your abilities allow you to interact with your environment, and the result is that you can approach basically every situation in a million different ways. You can sneak past the guards if you want to, you could take them out one by one with your crossbow, you could just jump in and take them all head on with your sword, or if you're like me, you could find a whale oil canister somewhere and just blow them up. This is definitely my preferred approach to the situation. The amount of control the game gives you to use your creativity to get through all of the different scenarios that it throws at you is really where the fun factor lies in this game, and it amps up the replayability as well. One part of the game's art that didn't really jive with me is the character design. Like, I understand it's supposed to be stylized, but I think most of the characters in this game look kind of goofy. Everybody just has these absolutely massive hands, like Harambe hands. It's ridiculous. And another thing is that many of the models used for NPCs just look like caricatures gestures, which I guess is in line with the huge hands problem, but on the other side of the coin, some of these look like an attempt at realism, but they still have huge hands. It's all very mishmashy and kind of confusing, and from a design perspective, I don't really think that works all that well. Arcane does a really great job of making all the characters look very unique and identifiable, but I just think many of them look really silly. I know a lot of people might disagree with me here, but I just don't really like it. So when it comes to the sound design in this game, the first thing that I wanted to tackle is the voice acting. And I thought they did a really decent job here. It's nothing extraordinary, but it serves its purpose pretty well. I felt there were a few areas that could have been improved upon, but nothing that was really all that major. However, the way that the game uses voice lines is really great, especially if you end up taking the stealthy approach in many missions. You can eavesdrop on all different types of conversations. Some of these aren't really all that useful, but others can actually give you really helpful information.
It'll wake up on its own if a fight breaks out. They're blind, but they can still hear.
And I really love how it helps build the world around you. As you walk around the city, you're going to hear civilians talking to each other about their day or whatever else, and guards complaining about their jobs, and all kinds of other stuff that just drives your immersion home. And just overall, I felt that the sound design was done pretty well. And this is really important for a stealth game like this one. The spatial audio is good, so with headphones on, you can usually tell where an enemy is by listening to them speak or walk around. I felt like things might have been a little bit louder than they should have been at times, but overall, I found this system to work the way that it needed to. A great example of this system at work is when you find yourself fighting these clockwork soldiers, which are like big robotic guys that have 4 swords. And now that I think about it, they kind of just look like General Grievous with one of the, like a B1 battle droid head. Kind of funny. But anyway, these guys have these little vocal cues that tell you what they're doing, like they found you or they're looking for you or whatever. I'll have to play a voice clip here just to kind of explain what I'm talking about.
Okay, the machine entering combat state.
But this is good because you'll be able to tell exactly where they're coming from and what they're doing, and these guys will literally one-tap you if you're not careful. The game also has some nice ambient music that adds to the experience while being careful not to distract you from the gameplay. Overall, I think the sound design is handled really well in Dishonored 2. I don't really have anything to complain about. It's just really well done. In my view, the best part about Dishonored 2 is the excellent attention to detail that Arcane put into it. They made a very clear effort to design each part of this game in a way that ensures nothing will ever really get stale. And I think this is best displayed in the way that they built 2 specific levels, so I'm going to show them off here. I'm not going to be discussing any of the story aspects here, but if you'd rather go into these missions completely blind, you can skip to the next chapter of the video. Okay, so first off, you have the Clockwork Mansion, which is this really massive mansion that moves around like a huge 3D puzzle. You'll need to flip these levers and the mansion will literally start taking itself apart and putting itself back together again with a different layout. The entire level is like this, so you'll need to work your way through it like a puzzle. And at first, I kind of just assumed that the parts of the level that are the mechanisms that kind of take away and hide were just disappearing. I figured if I jumped into the hole as the level was transforming that I'd just die as if I'd, fallen off the map. But you'll find yourself crawling around the back of all these mechanisms in the areas of the level that are supposed to be hidden. The entire level is designed to be completely functional. Video games usually use your perception of the level to trick you. Like, what you can't see in a game usually doesn't exist the way that you might think. You would kind of just think all this stuff would just be stuck together in some crazy mess at the back of the level, but in this level, it's completely functional. I thought this was crazy. It's incredible work, and I can only imagine how much effort and time went into developing this level. I imagine it must have been a nightmare, but the result is definitely worth it. This is one of the most incredible and unique levels that I have ever played through in a video game. The other example that I wanted to share was this level where you're shifting between 2 timelines to make your way through the level. You get this cool device that allows you to actually see what's going on in the other timeline, the one that you're not currently in, and you can jump to it when you want to. And you can just jump back and forth, so you can jump in, take out some guards, and then jump back to the present to get away from them. And in the present day, this mansion is in really bad shape, so you'll need to use this device to jump between timelines to get around some wreckage, blocking a door, or all kinds of other stuff that's going on in this place. This is just such a cool and unique idea for a level design, and this concept goes hand in hand with all of the mechanics of Dishonored 2. The experience is really remarkable. And again, I just really think this is where this game stands out. They didn't have to put this amount of effort into these levels. The game would have been fine without it, but I'm glad that they put this work into it because it just makes interacting with the environment that much more memorable. And it takes what was already a really great game world and it makes it truly outstanding. As far as performance is concerned, I personally didn't run into any issues. But when Dishonored 2 first came out, it had a bunch of issues in that department, especially on PC. Now, I played through the game on max settings at 1440p with an i7-13700K and an AMD 7900 XT. So it's safe to say that, with a high-end modern machine, you probably won't run into any issues. But if you're on a lower-end machine or a machine that is a few years old, I would look at some benchmarks before you pick this one up. Because I have done some reading, and even people running machines that really should be able to run this game are still having problems today. So I would do your research just to be safe. There were a couple of technical issues that I did run into though, and I think the most notable example of this is that during combat, you can literally just slide around executing people while you're actively in combat with them. It's completely broken. You can just spam slide and kill everyone with almost no difficulty at all. I tried to avoid playing like this, but if you want to cheese your way through this game, you can just slide around taking people out like it's nothing. This mechanic would be fine if it was only usable against enemies that were unaware of your presence, but the fact that you can slide into an enemy that is literally looking right at you and is about to try to kill you and just stab them in the chest and game over for them, it's totally game breaking. You can also just jump onto enemies in the same way, but this is a little bit harder to pull off, so it's not as big of a deal. I just think it's crazy that this wasn't patched out immediately. Actually, I think it's crazy that this wasn't even found in playtesting. The fact that this was allowed to remain in the launch version of this game boggles my mind. You would expect an exploit like this from a trash game from the mid-2000s, but not from a massive IP published by Bethesda. Oh, no, it definitely makes sense now. If you don't cheese your way through the game, you'll actually have a load of fun with the combat mechanics. It follows a pretty standard counter-attacking formula that basically every other melee-focused game uses, but this is fine because I think this stuff is pretty fun. The twist here, though, is that you're going to get access to all these supernatural abilities, and you're going to get your crossbow and grenades and all kinds of stuff that really layers on the fun factor. I loved getting the far reach ability fully maxed out. With this, you could just yank enemies through the air like I had the force. I thought it was stupidly hilarious at times. I had tons of fun with it. The game is really gory too, so there's a lot of fun to be had just cutting people limb from limb. And this is actually kind of a problem in a way. Dishonored 2 gives you the choice to either play high chaos by just killing everybody, or going low chaos by just basically not killing anybody. It just depends on your preference. You could play the entire game without killing anyone if you want to, but the problem is that, to me at least, killing people is just way too damn fun. I tried playing through some missions just stealthily, sleeping people and whatever. I don't know. I had too much fun cutting people in half and throwing their corpses around. That's just me. Maybe I'm a psychopath or something. I don't know. But to me, it just feels like this game gives you this low chaos option where you don't kill anybody and you shoot them with your sleep darts and put them in a chokehold. And it doesn't do enough to make that more fun than the high chaos option. I don't know. Maybe, like I said, maybe it's just me, but I just like cutting people in half. I don't know. Obviously, a big part of any stealth game is how the AI reacts to your presence. Most stealth games have pretty poor AI, and unfortunately, I found Dishonored 2 to be pretty much the same. I wouldn't say that it's awful, but it's not any better than you would expect. It's on par with the rest of the games in its genre. So expect to walk past enemies and not understand how they didn't hear or see you. You'll also find enemies seeing you when they definitely shouldn't have. It's just a little bit inconsistent at times. Like I said, it's basically what you would expect from any similar game and not better or worse than the industry standard, but I guess I just wish the industry standard would improve. A mechanic that I absolutely did not enjoy was the method that you upgrade your abilities and gear. The game equips you with this heart that you have to pull out to locate runes, which are basically the currency that you use to upgrade your abilities. You'll also use the heart to locate bone charms that function like perks, and I really did not enjoy needing to do this. I get that it's a way to kind of force the player to explore the map and take a look around, but the game already does this in a few other ways. So this just feels unnecessary and tedious. I think that a good alternative to this would have been to have, various challenges that you can complete throughout the mission to unlock these instead. The gameplay loop is really fun, and this could have been a great way to reinforce that, but instead we have this system that distracts from the fun parts of the game, which I just found to be a little bit disappointing. The game's main currency system is gold, which you accumulate by finding valuable items around the map. I don't mind this type of exploration because you need to choose to do it. The problem is that to spend this gold, you need to find a black market shop somewhere on the map. The only clues you're given, as far as I could tell anyway, were these cryptic paintings with arrows that you'll see on walls that point you in the general direction of the shop. I just found this to be a major annoyance. It just deterred me from even pursuing to spend my money a lot of the time. For the entire game, you have this boat that you're on that basically serves as your main base. Why not just put a shop on there? It's right there, just put it there. I don't get it. Needing to use clues to find a place to do something as simple as just upgrade your crossbow or refill on health elixirs was just something that I found to be extremely dull and very annoying. Besides all that, I think Dishonored 2 is a great game. It does have a few shortcomings, like I mentioned, but as a complete package, there's a lot of fun to be had here. There's a lot to like. I would definitely say that it's a worthwhile purchase, especially because these days you can get it on a ridiculously cheap sale, like around $6 we're talking. And you'll easily get 10 to 12 hours out of it from one playthrough. And I know 10 hours seems pretty short, but dollars to hours here, we're doing pretty good. $6 for 10 hours. I'm not complaining about that. If you're a completionist, or if you really end up liking this game, you're going to get a lot more than that out of it, and I promise it's worth it. You should definitely have this one in your backlog. It's a great game with some really cool stuff to offer you, from the remarkably unique level designs to the super awesome supernatural abilities. There really isn't anything else that ticks all the same boxes that this game does. So no matter what type of games you like to play, I'm sure there's something in Dishonored 2 that you're really going to enjoy.